Well, it's an emergency time for the progressive movement of the planet. We were within inches of having the widest lane to the White House of any candidate, and it was snatched back from us. For those of us who understood what we were dealing with, a candidate of Bernie Sanders' type, a man of the people of his type, has not really ever seriously challenged power in the United States, ever. It would be the first. It would be as if Tom Paine had run after 1800 and Tom Paine was left to die alone, largely penniless. The man who wrote Common Sense and rallied Valley Forge was left alone. And my Twitter account is called Jeffersonian Alliance, and people tease me about Jefferson's slaves. I try to explain that Jeffersonian democracy is a concept that goes beyond a specific individual and starts with Tom Paine, perhaps ends with James Madison. So there we have a modern Tom Paine drawing the delegates with a delegate lead after Nevada. 3 states in a row. Never been done before without winning the White House. Well, now it's all in jeopardy. The powers that be talked to Barack Obama, and Barack Obama made a few phone calls. Everyone dropped out, endorsed Biden, and we discovered what it is when Donald Trump controls one of the propaganda arms, Fox News, and Biden effectively controls 2 others, MSNBC and CNN. And who is for Sanders? No one. Democracy Now! Watched online, listened to by a few radicals on the radio, a reach of 3-4 million people at best, the progressive media through the mainstream, whereas CNN and MSNBC at high moments are reaching a third of the Democratic electorate. And we live with an electoral system that we have no idea the veracity. We can look at exit poll deltas. What do we make of them? There's a 5% exit poll delta here and a 7% there, and the exit polls aren't actually conducted in any official way. They're done by a private company, and they don't release the raw data. They adjust the polls because they're different demographics. There are people coming out the same day as the people who voted ahead of time by mail or by absentee. We don't really know whether the problem is the youth turnout, the youth registration, the youth ID. We don't know where in the process is getting stopped. Then we looked at electoral integrity by state, and we noticed that the states with the worst electoral integrity, which are basically the most redneck, have the highest margins for Biden. And in this primary, it's about differences in delegates per state. That's the only relevant thing. Did I get 10 more delegates than the next guy or the next group than the others? It doesn't. If Biden gets 27 and Sanders gets 27, nobody else goes. It's as if the state didn't vote. It's all about margin, and we see Sanders' margin declining as the late returns come in and tightening. He'll end up with more delegates, but traditionally a left candidate like Sanders is trending with the last-minute ballots. How did the establishment get somebody who can't string coherent sentences together to have a last-minute surge of voters? How did the establishment get somebody? So we've got Clinton in 2016. She lost to Trump because she is has a very, she's an easily dislikable person. She might also be likable by some, but there's a large number of people that don't like her. And what we found out in the Northeast, in Maine, in Massachusetts. Now, I want to say in Massachusetts, Bernie should have certainly come in second, but the progressive vote was split in Massachusetts like nowhere else, with Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders collectively drawing about 48% of the vote, and Biden drawing perhaps 33%. So the progressive movement, in theory, dominated in Massachusetts, but in Maine and in Minnesota, where, of course, Klobuchar endorsing Biden, being a senator from Minnesota, also weighed in. So there were special factors on Massachusetts this year. Bernie did reasonably well, 28% or so. But we do have to ask, what does this even mean when we don't have electoral integrity? And where do we go from here? Well, where are we? Bernie and Biden within probably at the end of the day 30 delegates of each other. Biden at the north end of that. Around 600 and 630 delegates. Our plan was to go to the convention with the majority of the delegates. Plan B was to go to the convention with a plurality, but not a majority, less than 51%, and to have at least a 300 delegate margin against somebody like Biden, so that the Democratic Party is basically committing suicide when it replaces the clear leader with a vastly behind second tier player. So that's what we have to play for now, and if we get the majority, which we still can, then that's a bonus. But right now we have to play for the plurality. And if we don't get the plurality, we have to make the biggest influence we can on the Democratic Party by coming as close to possible to the a large plurality, a small plurality, an evenness. So we have to extract what we can out of all these. But we have to, after this election, really think about how to create an engaged citizenry. And my view, according to the Declaration of Independence, is when the government becomes tyrannical, according to the Declaration of Independence, people have the right to dissolve it and to form a new one. And the simplest way to form a new government is to have an online voting system that is not anonymous. This is going to be very easy to verify. Everyone who's got a driver's license and a birth certificate can vote online. And we sacrifice anonymity. But we already have no anonymity in the case of the caucus. So the risk of election fraud is so great that I personally recommend we vote online. And that way, the young people will vote because they don't have to go and sit in line for 4 hours or deal with the bureaucracy, which they clearly are not able to do at the moment, or their votes are being put through a shredder. So, one issue is what do we do after the election? We have a huge movement of millions of people. We need to turn it into some real muscle because this planet is dying. It's coming down to, both on the one hand, a tyrannical oligarchy that is getting more strong every day, controlling. So, and every of us who are in business know the medium-sized and small businesses are getting snatched up and rolled up by big businesses constantly. So there's a vacuum coming from the monopolies who have huge amounts of extra money they can use. And then you have private equity players and various other players. But